Greetings, Benjamin J from BENZTRAINZ with another in the series. Well, I wanted to do a quick video on this Marx 3000 that I just repainted. Now, this thing was just absolute junk. It was just absolutely eaten alive with rust. It was beyond help. There was nothing I could do with it as far as making it look good, other than pulling off the handrail and painting it black. And that's what I've done. So, as you see, this actually doesn't look too bad, considering it was made completely out of a junk locomotive. And I got this, I don't know, months ago from eBay or someplace. It came in a box of parts, and it was just the shell. Like I said, the thing was just absolutely covered in rust. So there was really nothing I could do with it. So I pulled the handrails off. I had to replace one of the markers, and it has the red insert in the smokestack. But other than that, it was complete. It was just covered. I mean, everything was covered in rust. So I've used that black Rust-Oleum textured paint, as you see. I didn't take any pains with this at all. In fact, you can still see how badly rusted it was under the paint here. I mean, this rust was just absolutely eating this thing alive. So anyway, I pulled the handrail off, replaced this marker, sprayed it with that textured paint, put a motor in it, and just reinstalled the handrail. And as you see, this actually doesn't look too bad. This is going to be its first trip around the rail, so I wanted to do a quick video just to document this. So a Marx 3000 that was just beat to death, just absolutely useless, covered in rust. So two coats of that Rust-Oleum textured paint. This is the result. As you see, that is running really, really well. It's got an old motor in it that I bypassed the E unit on, so it runs forward only. But as you see, it actually runs and doesn't look bad at all, considering this was a piece of useless junk. And this was rusted beyond hope. There was nothing you could do with it but throw it away or strip it for whatever parts you could get off of it. And yet 10 minutes with that textured paint, and it gives you a running locomotive. I don't think anyone would object to owning this. It's far from perfect, but it's a running locomotive that actually doesn't look too bad. Actually, from a foot away, it looks quite good. It's very reminiscent of a 391. As you see, it is completely black. It covered up all of the rust. I mean, it covered up all of the rust. And I just put a piece of tape over the lens and pulled the handrail off, sanded all the rust off of it, and just stuck the handrail back on. And its first trip around the rail. So it's got an old full-size single reduction motor in it. I bypassed the E unit on it months ago, and since I had the motor, I figured I might as well make use of this shell. Like I said, I'm trying to stay busy. It's cold here, so there's really not much I can do outside. So an old motor, an old shell that was rusted beyond use, and two coats of Rust-Oleum textured black paint, and I have a running locomotive. Like I said, it even has the red insert in the smokestack, as you see. So it doesn't look bad, it runs well, made completely out of junk. And that's why I always stress, don't overlook the junk. Just because something's junk when you get it, doesn't mean it's going to be junk when you're finished with it. Is it perfect? Nope, far from it. It was an old 3000 shell that was so covered in rust that it was virtually useless. And you couldn't derust it. I mean, you could derust it, but it was covered with rust and it was covered with pitting. So I just basically scraped all the heavy rust off of it, cleaned it up, and sprayed it with that black paint. Pulled the handrail off first, scraped all the rust off the handrail, and I had to replace the right side marker. And it's still missing the green insert on the right side, but even so, this old locomotive is up and running. It's running at 30% power, pulling that consist. And as you see, you have a running locomotive made completely out of junk. And if you looked up junk in the dictionary, there was a picture of this Marx 3000. This thing was trash, just absolutely trash, covered in rust, eaten alive in rust. And yet a few minutes work. And 2 coats of that Rust-Oleum textured paint. And as you see, this actually doesn't look bad at all. It looks quite respectable, in fact. It's far from perfect, but it's a running locomotive, whereas an hour ago it was a junk shell and an old Marx motor out of a 999 originally. Anyway, single reduction motor, has a bypassed E-unit, and since I had the shell, I figured I might as well make use of that motor. And there was one that I was thinking about using, but that's too nice of a motor to put in this shell. So anyway, it's up and running. Pulled the handrail off, scraped all the rust off of it. Like I said, it's still far from perfect, but it's a running locomotive. That black textured paint covered every speck of that rust. I mean, you would never know this thing was just a rusted piece of junk when I got it. It actually doesn't look too bad. Like I said, it's far from perfect, but it's a running locomotive. Like I said, no one would object to owning this. It doesn't look bad at all, considering what it looked like when I started. So, again, I got to stress it. Don't overlook the junk. And if you had seen this, most people would have stripped it for whatever parts they could get off of it and thrown it in a trash can. And yet, just a few minutes, scraped the bulk of the rust off of it, cleaned it up. I didn't put any time in it at all. And that black textured paint just hides all of the damage from that rust. It's actually quite incredible. The stuff works really, really well. So a can of paint and about 20 minutes of my time. Let the paint dry, put the handrail back on after I scraped the rust off of it. Dropped a motor in it, and I have a new locomotive. It actually doesn't look too bad at all. Like I said, I don't think anyone would object to owning this. So if you want to do this on an absolute shoestring budget, this is the way to do it. You can take some real junk, I mean bottom of the barrel junk, and a few minutes of your time, some textured black paint to hide all the damage, pull the handrails off, scrape the rust off of them so it gives you a bit of contrast with that silver on the black. Had to replace that marker. Other than that, I masked off the headlight, the red lens in the stack, and sprayed it with that black textured paint. And this is the result. This thing is up and running. And not only running, but running really, really well. And from a foot away, this looks virtually new. I mean, no one would ever know this was just a junk shell. Like I said, it came with something I got on eBay in a box of parts or something. I'm not really sure. It wasn't complete. It was just a shell. And just absolutely eaten alive with rust. And 2 coats of that black textured paint. It hides 99% of the damage. Pull the handrail off, scrape it so it's silver again, slide it back on. It has the red insert in the smokestack, and it runs nice, it looks nice, and it cost nothing. And this was made completely out of junk parts. So as you see, it was worth the time it took. And I'll go ahead and leave this on the rail for tonight and run it. That'll help cure that paint, the heat from the motor. Like I said, the cold and the humidity, the dampness in the air really affects how long it takes this paint to dry. But as you see, that locomotive actually looks quite good. So I was really pleased with it. It was definitely worth the time it took to do it. It cost nothing, and here I have a new locomotive that from a foot away actually looks quite good. Like I said, I don't think anyone would object to owning this. It doesn't look bad at all. And if you had seen this before I started, you would have thrown it in the trash can. I mean, this was junk in every sense of the word. Absolutely eaten alive with rust. And yet, here it is. An hour of my time, something like that. Stuck a motor in it, and you have a new locomotive that is more than respectable looking. Far from perfect, but up and running. And like I said, from a foot away, this actually looks quite good. So I just wanted to do a quick video. A Marx 3000 resurrected from the dead. I mean, this thing was just absolute junk. As you see, it runs nice, it looks nice, and it was virtually free. It just depends if you want to put the time in to actually do this. It's not difficult. It's really not time consuming. I mean, the total from when I started to when I actually put the handrails back on was an hour or so. And that paint sets up pretty quick. And there's not a lot on here. There's only 2 coats of paint on this. I just wanted to cover the rust and see if it was worth pursuing. And actually it is. I had to paint the pilot as well. This, of course, was nickel. But it was so badly rusted there was nothing I could do with it. So I had to paint it. And as you see, I painted every square inch of this locomotive. This thing was just eaten alive with rust. I did replace that marker. And other than masking off the lens and that red insert, I've done nothing else to it except scrape the rust off, gave it a quick wipe down, set it up on that bucket, and sprayed it with that black textured paint. This is 2 coats. So, as you can see, it was worth the time it took. It looks nice, it runs well, it gives me a new locomotive that costs nothing. So anyway, I just want to do a quick video. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email, BENZTRAINZ@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for watching.